Hello parents, welcome to my kitchen. As your family support worker, I decided I would share a recipe that is a very popular one in my family, and I'm hoping your family will enjoy it too. I'm cooking a quick, fairly easy version of Indian butter chicken. So you're going to be seeing a series of videos and then hearing me in the background telling you what I'm doing in those videos. By now you would have received a hard copy of the recipe. So the ingredients and the spices that you see, you can actually get all of that from Freshco, located at 1595 Maryville Road. It's at the intersection of Maryville and Meadowlands, and it's next to PetSmart. Okay, I think that's it. So let's get started and get cooking here. The first part of the recipe is marinating the chicken. You can use breast chicken or thigh. In this recipe, I'm using 2 large breast chicken that I'm cutting into bite-sized pieces. Before I started cutting the chicken, I washed the chicken thoroughly to make sure it's clean and sort of dried it out. And now I'm cutting them into those bite-sized pieces. I also suggest don't cut them too small because it does lose some moisture in the curry. I'm going to be adding the spices to marinate the chicken. I've used a standard plastic spoon that everyone probably has one in their home so that you can understand the quantity that I'm using. So I'm going to start with adding 1 teaspoon of chili powder, 1 teaspoon of garam masala, and a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric powder, and then 1 teaspoon of salt, but you can add salt to your taste. And now we're just gonna mix all of this very well so that the spices can all get into the chicken. And here's where you can then marinate it for 30 minutes, or you could marinate it overnight and then start cooking the next day. So that's up to you. Here I have marinated it overnight, and now I'm going to be cooking it the next day. So the next part of the recipe is to cook the chicken. So I'm going to bring our flame to a medium heat. I'm going to be using a pot here, a large pot. You can use a large saucepan. I'm adding the vegetable oil. The recipe calls for 1 tablespoon. I'm adding a little more than 1 here because my chicken is a little bit big and needs a little bit more oil to cook. I'm now taking the chicken that I marinated, and I'm now adding it to the pot and sort of evening it out so it sort of cooks evenly. And if you notice, it's sort of pinkish in color. So this pink color now has to cook and turn to this whitish color. If you pick it up now and you sort of pinch at it, you'll notice that it's no more pink inside, and so that tells you that your chicken is cooked. It's kind of tender, not too tender, but tender enough that you can now take it out of the pot. So here I'm separating the water that sort of came out of the chicken and taking the chicken into 1 pot, and then I'll be pouring this water or gravy I should say into another pot, which I will be using later. So now we're going to make the butter chicken gravy. So here we're going to bring our stove back to a medium heat, put the pot on the stove, add 2 to 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil, bring it to start heating it up. At this point you can chop up that onion and then add the onion to the warm oil. The oil needs to be a little bit hot to get it cooking. The onion, we want it to turn translucent, soft. At that point you're going to add 3 tablespoons of butter. You could add 2, but then it is called butter chicken, so you need the taste of butter, so I prefer 3. Then allow that to cook. At this point, you now add 1 tablespoon of ginger, 1 tablespoon of garlic, and then 2 to 3 teaspoons of lemon juice, and then allow that to cook. And then you can now add the spices. Remember, we've already added quite a bit of spice to the chicken when it was marinated. So here you can sort of reduce the spice. So I added half a teaspoon of garam masala, half a teaspoon of chili powder, and 1 teaspoon of cumin powder and 1 bay leaf. If you want to reduce the spice, add a 1/4 teaspoon of garam masala and chili powder. Now allow the spices to cook 6 to 7 minutes until the oil starts to separate. Okay, so now we're going to add tomato puree. So you can add 1 cup of tomato puree, or you can chop up 2 large tomatoes and then grind them and add the grinded tomatoes to your spices here. And so gently incorporate the tomato into the spices and then allow it to cook for about 6 to 8 minutes until you'll notice that the color will now change to a darker reddish color. You can now add the yogurt. So mix the yogurt well before adding, because if you don't mix it well, it's going to split up into the curry and become little curds. So mix it well before adding, and then slowly incorporate the cream into the curry mixture. And now we're just going to lower our heat down to low. And then we're going to place our pot back on, close the lid, and then cook it for 10 minutes. And at this point, you can add the remaining liquid that you kept aside from the chicken if you like. You don't have to, but I like to add it for taste. And now you can chop up some coriander to use to garnish the chicken once it's done. Now the gravy has been cooking for 10 minutes. I've done an additional 6 minutes. To it, you can add a pinch of black pepper, salt to taste. You will now be adding the chicken into your curry mixture. So, and then you'll allow it to cook for 6 to 8 minutes. Once the oil starts to rise up to the top, at this point, if you like it a little bit watery, you can serve it up now. If not, you can then thicken it by making a cornstarch mixture. And then before you add it, I suggest remove some of the oil. Because once you add the cornstarch mixture, it sort of becomes like a gravy. You don't sort of see the oil, which gives it a bit of a different taste. When adding the cornstarch mixture, gently add it. Don't rush, because it thickens very quickly, so be careful when adding it. And then when you get the right consistency, turn off the stove, add the oil that you took out back in, and then garnish it with coriander. You can have it with rice or naan, and as you can see, I'm having here with naan, and I think it tastes good, but that's my opinion. I suggest you guys make it at home, try it out with your family, and then email me and let me know how it goes. If you have any questions, just email. All right, enjoy the Indian butter chicken.